Hi, my name is Samantha Schwartz. I'm the Marketing Director for Royal Truck and Equipment, and in today's episode we're going to be talking about the benefits of an air brake chassis for your TMA truck. So there's three main things for an air brake chassis that we want to go over today to make sure that you know. Number one, the air brake system is just stronger. Number two, they are fail-safe. And number three, really important in an attenuator truck application is that it has a shorter roll-ahead distance, which we'll go over, okay? So behind me, I want to give some credit to Smart Test Drive. Shout out to your YouTube channel. They have a really great diagram that I'm going to go over to explain to you how the air brake system works, okay? So this is not how an air brake system is laid out in a chassis, but I think it's really good visual to go over how it does work. So there's some main components in an air brake system. One is the compressor. This compressor is just like an air compressor that you would have in your garage. The biggest difference is with this air compressor is that it runs all the time when the engine is running, which is why they have what's called a governor. The governor is actually going to restrict that air supply that is going to go into the air tank. What does that mean? You don't want your air tank to obviously overflow, so it's really kind of like a thermostat in your house. If you set it at 70 degrees, it's going to shut off when it hits that, and it's going to turn on when it doesn't get to that. So the air in an air tank or air brake system is held in the air tank, obviously. So the cool part about an air brake chassis system is that you have an unlimited air supply. Since that compressor is running all the time that engine is on, you're never going to have a shortage of brakes. The thing to know about your air tank when air comes in is that when the air comes in, okay, that hot air hits it right in the air tank and you have condensation. So there's actually water and stuff that gathers in that air tank. That's why you have a drain valve. In a lot of the systems these days, the drain valve is actually automatic. Whereas if you have an older air brake system, you might have to actually drain that thing every day. But right now, it's just gonna drain that air out for you. So potentially, if you're operating an attenuator truck in the winter time, that water might freeze and that system won't work anymore. But that valve will drain it out for you. There's also a safety valve. So let's say that too much air is getting pumped into that chamber. Maybe your compressor is broken. That safety valve is going to kick in. It's actually going to release air out of that air tank. It's actually going to sound a little bit like a machine gun. It's really scary. It's very loud. But you're going to know when that happens in your air chassis to just take it in right away to a mechanic, because it's probably your compressor. It might be the governor, but most likely it's probably that compressor. So you have air brake lines. Now what happens when you push this brake pedal, okay, which we'll go over where that is, what it looks like. When you push this brake pedal, it's going to push air out, okay, into these drum brakes, okay. Now, with drum brakes and an air brake chassis, when you press down on that brake pedal, that air is going to go directly out, okay. Let me show you a visual real quick. So I want to give you a visual of the air brake system. So I'm going to use our associate Taylor and our summer interns Ashley and Andrew. In this scenario, Ashley is the air and Taylor and Andrew are actually our brake pads. So what happens when I press on the brake pedal is the air actually goes away, and if you see the brake pads firmly pressed against that brake drum, giving it a really tight braking system. Okay, thanks guys. Okay, you just saw a visual of how that air works. We used Ashley and Andrew and Taylor. So this is actually that brake pedal, okay, that air is going to compress against. The thing with an air brake chassis is that it actually has two drum brakes. So when you have this brake pedal and you push it down, it's actually going to lock up both systems, okay, front and back. Very important. So that actually makes it a little bit of a stronger braking system than potentially what you currently are owning with your TMA truck. In an air brake chassis system, there's three types of brakes. Okay, it's very important to know. You have your regular brake pedal, which is going to actually control that front and rear brake. You have a parking brake, and you also have an emergency brake. So in the event of, let's say, an impact with your attenuator truck, that emergency brake is going to kick in. It's going to use air from the parking brake, and it's going to use air from that regular service brake, your everyday brake system that you're using. That's really important. So just as a reminder, like we reviewed in our GVWR episode about an air brake endorsement, I'm just going to review it again so you know, because we're talking about air brake chassis. If you're driving an attenuator truck and you live in the state of Illinois, you do need to get a CDL, a commercial driver's license. If you live in Illinois, you have to take a CDL, commercial driver's license test, in order to drive an attenuator truck there because it does weigh over 16,000 pounds. That is the law in Illinois right now. When you take that test, you're going to get a license. On that license, there's going to be something that says you have an air brake restriction. So remember, when you go in to take that CDL test, just ask them for the air brake test as well, so that air brake restriction gets lifted and you're good to go. In some states, that test is $5 to $10. Some states that it's free, so you just have to ask. All right, now back to the air brake chassis. So I want to show you what would happen in the event of an impact with your TMA truck and you're using it and you have it on an air brake chassis. So you've got your TMA truck, don't mind the drawing, it's kind of bad, but you've got your TMA truck and then you've got your workers in the work zone. Maybe they're painting a line, maybe they're doing some paving, but your truck, now legally, once you want to have your truck, if it's a stationary operation, which we'll use this as an example, you want it at least 175 feet back behind the workers. Why? Because let's say you've got a driver here, okay, that's driving, and they are entering your work zone, okay, and they're traveling at 65 miles per hour, and this is just your general pickup truck. Now, this is stationary, okay, you do have someone in this TMA truck right now, and this slams into the back of your attenuator. This thing gets crunched up. Now, remember what I said before? This was 175 feet away, okay? So these guys are working, they're safe. All of a sudden, this person potentially is texting and driving. They slam into the back of your attenuator truck, this crunches up. Now you are gonna have some roll ahead distance, okay? So this truck is actually going to move forward, which is why it's incredibly important to have your TMA truck positioned far back enough. On an air brake chassis, it's already been proven that the roll ahead distance is actually going to be less. Let's say it's 90 to 100 feet forward. So that truck comes all the way up to here, saving all three of these men that are working in the work zone, or women, and you still have 75 feet to spare. Okay, that's an air brake chassis. Why? Because as we just learned with those brake drums, when you press that brake pedal, and here the parking brake was probably on, it actually enacted both sets of brakes, and that stopping power, as you can see when that thing hits, it's going to travel further ahead in the work zone. As opposed to potentially another braking system that's out on the market today, this roll ahead distance might be 150, maybe it's 125. But at the end of the day, the goal of that attenuator truck is to protect the men and women working in front of it. So you want to make sure that you have the strongest braking system on your truck as possible. So I hope you learned a lot about air brake chassis and why they're important for being built on attenuator trucks. I know at Royal that it's really important we build our attenuator trucks on air brake systems. So just remember 3 different things when you ask whoever you're buying that attenuator truck from, what chassis is it built on? 1, we know that air brakes are just stronger. 2, remember that they're fail safe. There's always air pumping into that system. On average, if your brakes fail on an air chassis, they have 10 to 12 braking capacities in that air tank. So you got a lot going on there to make sure that you're safe. And number 3 is it's actually a shorter roll ahead distance if that TMA truck does get hit by a distracted driver. So I hope to see you next time, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to learn more. Goodbye.